Hello and welcome to MTG Reads. I'm DP, author, MTG fan and voracious reader, here to round up some of the very best of the articles about Magic the Gathering from the past week. This week there were at least 186 articles that I came across, many of which are about how people are not happy with Magic the Gathering. So let's dive right into it with Nick Prince's article over at TCG Player. Now, in any normal week of any normal year, Nick's article about a ban and restricted announcement in the first week of a new rotation would be the biggest story of the week. And this one, a contentious ban of just a single card, would have been more so. Nick writes from his first-hand experience of playing in the pre-release week on Arena and his disappointment and his fatigue, and how the Omnath deck has become all-conquering. One very telling quote from Nick's article is, "WotC is a business that makes a game and not a game company." He goes through what has gone horribly wrong, why he thinks it's not going to get better, and admits that having been a player for 12 continuous years, he is now considering streaming other things. A damning and telling indictment on the state of Magic the Gathering at the moment. But that turned out not to be the biggest news story of the week and was rapidly overshadowed by the announcement about the Secret Lair Walking Dead edition. Now, if you haven't heard the news, this will include some black bordered, mechanically unique cards, and that set the world afire. You'd think it was the Armageddon. Luckily, articles about this were much more balanced and sensible than some of the takes on YouTube or Twitter. For example, Kendra Smith at Cool Stuff Inc. took a balanced look, starting by looking at the history of limited availability cards, whether that's Mana Crypt that was available only from a book, all the way through to the more modern buy a box cards. Now, all of these limited availability cards have caused outrage, and Wizards has rode back on them in every case, including as recently as the Zendikar Rising buy a box, which it made certain was not mechanically unique and was actually just an alternate art of a card included in the set. And they admit that they did this to avoid blowback from players. She also takes a look at the history of the crossovers, or at least the more recent history. She ignores things like Aladdin and Shakespeare quotes, and instead she's looking at things like the Autobots, My Little Ponies, the very recent Godzilla tie-ins. And she's looking at how those were managed in such a way that people were generally happy with those tie-ins, and contrasts that directly with how it's being handled for The Walking Dead. As usual for Kendra's articles, this is very well explained and very well written out, taking a look at many of the implications that come from the way that Wizards has decided to do this release. And it finishes by pulling on a wonderful cartoon that explains the fears of where this could go. But balanced and nuanced arguments didn't prevail everywhere. And once Wizard admitted that Commander players were very much the target audience for the Secret Lair drop, Twitter and YouTube was suddenly aflame with people demanding that the Rules Committee ban these cards outright before even ordering has started. So my third favourite article of this week actually was the very clear and well articulated response by Sheldon Menery on the Rules Committee website. In it, Sheldon explains why the Rules Committee can't find a sensible and agreeable way that they could ban cards on availability and apply it uniformly going forward. He also explains why the fact that it's not Magic IP makes no sense to ban cards, as we already have many cards that aren't uniquely Magic IP, and there are lots of fans out there who would like to see other universes brought into this game. As Sheldon quite rightly puts it, this could draw in new players, and Commander, as a social game, should welcome new friends we just haven't met yet. He also explains that whilst one of these cards features Negan, a particularly unsavoury character, that shouldn't be a reason to selectively ban cards. Magic the Gathering's entire history and lore is based around great heroes and great villains. Many of the heroes are flawed, but the villains are truly horrendous. Yawgmoth committed genocides, tortured and experimented on people, and there's loads of that sort of thing in Magic's history. So start by banning Negan and you end up having to ban lots of cards. Meanwhile, Saffron Olive over at MTG Goldfish took a step back and was taking a look at the wider landscape. He's taking a look at not just the issue of the bans and the ineffective bans and the death of standard that Nick was talking about, but also taking a look at the secret lair drops and the problems that came from that was mentioned by Kendra and Sheldon. He also was looking at problems we've experienced over the last 15 months with Magic and was looking for the root cause. And it basically boils down to the fact that Wizards of the Coast, owned by Hasbro, is there to make money, not make a game. He shows that even though the game has clearly been in decline for the past 15 months and that lots of problems have been shown, Wizards of the Coast's profits have been soaring, and that Hasbro thinks that they can double within the next couple of years. So the old idea that the link between whether the game is any good and whether it is profitable has been broken, and that the short-term benefits of pushing forward with this model will maximise their profits, but that it is a short-term thing and that it needs to be challenged for what is the longer-term benefit of the game and therefore the longer-term profitability for Hasbro and Wizards. It's certainly a very well written article and well substantiated with lots of good examples of how Wizards is out to make the maximum profit at the minimum expense and how that is working. It is slightly undermined by the fact that he admits he will keep pouring money into Wizards, which will keep perpetuating the way this situation goes, which, if you're a player, is seen as a problem, and if you're a shareholder in Hasbro, is seen as a wonderful opportunity. Which begs the question, so what can we do about it? Obviously, on one hand, we can do the Saffron Olive type approach, which is to open our wallets, hold on tight, and hope for the best. Another alternative is proposed by Cassie LaBelle at TCG Player. In part 1 of a 2-part article, she writes about how you can sell your Magic collection. Now, this isn't a simple how you can make a profit from it type article about MTG finance. This is actually, what if you are so fatigued? What if you find you're not playing it? Are you going to step out of it? And if so, how do you maximize your return? Now, she asks some very important questions up front. Why are you thinking of coming out of Magic? Why are you looking at selling them? And she has some very good recommendations on how you can avoid some regret downstream. She goes on to explain then when you should sell, why you should sell, where you should sell. And she does a very good set of balance on how you can balance your time and effort in selling them versus the profit you make. Now, it's a really good article. It also covers a very rational response to the secret lair drop and to the bannings. And I would say, if you had time to read just one article this week, then Cassie LaBelle's is the article to read. It is not, however, my favourite article of the week. My number 1 slot this week goes to MATEUSZ BORKOWICZ over at Cardmarket. It's a slightly odd one, in so much as what he's actually looking at is the Dunning-Kruger effect and its effect on Magic the Gathering and Magic the Gathering players. Now, if you know about this, it's a graph that shows the level of confidence that people have got based on the amount of knowledge they've got in a subject, and it's not specifically for Magic. He is applying it to Magic. And it's how, if you're confident, then that tends to lead towards more definitive pronouncements, and therefore, very often, the people who are most confident are the people who are most vocal about something. Ironically, though, the Dunning-Kruger effect shows that people are probably at their most confident when they've got relatively little knowledge. So the people shouting loudest on Twitter are likely to be the people who know the least. The people who are quieter are probably because they know more. It's certainly a very interesting article, certainly well presented, thoroughly enjoyable, but for me it's because of this piece of advice about the internet and our time on the internet that I really like it as my pick of the week for best article. Think about how much you objectively know about a subject and consider if you may be overly confident in a belief. Let us all make the internet and online magic community a better place, as the knowledge we share should help others grow. Just remember, when you're on the web, read with caution, post responsibly. And with that excellent advice from MATEUSZ, that finishes this week's roundup. If you like what you've seen, please hit the thumbs up button, consider subscribing, and I'll be back again in future with the very best of next week's articles. But until then, happy reading.